On today's episode of the Homebody podcast, I am so excited to welcome Samantha Skelly, a powerhouse entrepreneur, an international best-selling author, sought-after international speaker, host of the Can't Be Contained podcast, and founder of the world's leading breathwork brand, Pause Breathwork. For over a decade, Samantha has made a significant impact in the world of spiritual and personal transformation. Her trauma-informed approach to healing and awakening through the power of breathwork has changed the lives of over 500,000 people and counting. Her mission advances through training and certifying people to become breathwork facilitators and through her innovation mobile app, Pause Breathwork. Samantha has shared the stage with inspirational leaders such as Tony Robbins, Kobe Bryant, Marie Forleo, and Marianne Williamson. Her work has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, Women's Health, Global TV, and The Doctors and CBS. I am so excited for this episode and for you to dive in. And if you enjoy this episode, please hit the like and subscribe button now. Today on the Homebody podcast, I am so honored to have Samantha Skelly join me. Welcome, Sam, to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Sam, could you explain why you believe so many traditional self-help methods are not really delivering the lasting change that they kind of promise?
We have to pay attention to nervous system regulation if we want sustainable transformation. I think at the base of it, nervous system regulation and paying attention to our nervous system is the most important work that we can possibly do. When I first started off, in personal development, I kind of got into it. Well, my dad was really into Tony Robbins. So I remember just like listening to Tony Robbins tapes as we would travel from Vancouver to Winnipeg on this like crazy long holiday. And so I always knew about personal development. But then when I struggled with disordered eating and body image issues and all the rest of it, I was doing a lot of mindset work, really trying to figure out, trying to change myself through the mind. And then I realized through discovering breathwork that if we want to feel better, we have to be better feelers. We actually have to get into the body and unearth things at a cellular level and really pay attention to our nervous system. I think the world is so dysregulated. Yeah. It's so quick. It's so fast. We're always hustling. And nervous system regulation is about adding health into our body, and not just on an emotional and spiritual health, but physical health too. When our body's regulated and there's a lack of disease, our body can heal itself. And so I found that breathwork and somatic practices have been just such a game changer in that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think when you're talking about feeling better, that was the catalyst for all of the work that I kind of stepped into. Was the first time that I experienced movement in a way that my body kind of had this sigh of relief, like, oh, I can actually feel different to the state that I was in. That's a huge shift for so many people. So what was that kind of first experience of breathwork like for you, and how did you stumble upon it? Like, what was that kind of experience like?
Great question. So I was living in Vancouver, Canada at the time. Where are you from? Where do you live?
I'm in Australia.
Okay. So I just came home from Australia. I was living there for a year.
Wow.
And I was reading the book Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. And there's a section in the book where she talks about going to Bali. She like basically made Bali famous, right, by this book. And she went to go see this medicine man who did like acupuncture on her feet, right? And anyway, there was something inside of me as I was reading that book. I was like, I need to go there. I need to figure this out. So I booked a one-way ticket to Bali. I went there. I found this guy. I went to go have a session with him. And at the end of the session, he just looks at me and he says, "You think way too much. Your brain is so busy. You need to go meditate." And I'm like, oh no, I hate meditation, right? Someone who has ADHD, body image issues, just like a really busy brain to sit there and feel your emotions is highly uncomfortable. So, but I was like, you know what? I came all the way to Bali. I should probably go listen to this guy. So I hopped back on my scooter and I went to this meditation school. There was actually no meditation class present, but there was a breathwork class. And I thought, what is that? This was 15 years ago before breathwork was cool. And there was that little voice inside of me that was like, just go do the class. You're here. Just go do it. So I walked up to the stairs and I opened the door, and there's this guy dressed all in white with this big long beard. He looked like Jesus. And he looks at me and he goes, "Are you ready to go on the ride of your life?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's
Oh,
like,
shit.
"Yeah." He's like, "You were going to experience the entire range of human emotion." And I was like, I can feel numb and I can feel anxious. Like, those are the two neighborhoods that I hang out. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he was like, "Well, through the breath, we're able to unearth and let go and feel new things. And you'll be out of your mind and you'll be in your body." And I'm like, this sounds really good, but like, maybe not for, it's probably not going to work for me, like, so skeptical. So anyways, I lie down and I start breathing and the 3-part breath. And within 3 to 5 minutes, my body just feels alive and electric. And I was releasing and shedding so much heartbreak and pain and anxiety that was living in my body. And I was breathing in so much connection and joy and bliss. And that 3-hour session felt like 15 minutes. And after I was done, I'm like, why does the whole world not know we can do this? This is so crazy. And so I was a student of breathwork for 8 years and studied with some of the top gurus at the time. And then 8 years after practicing, I just thought, well, it wasn't even a thought. It was just like a download of, you need to teach the world to breathe. It's called pause breathwork. Go do it. It was basically the instruction. And so I've been building pause since 2017. And it's been a dream. We've certified thousands of people on our method. We have thousands of people that breathe with us every single day on our app. It's been a whole dream. So yeah.
What a journey. And the determination that you had, like after reading Eat, Pray, Love and going, I'm going to find that specific person and go to that specific place, like
Mm-hmm.
to actually follow through with those actions is, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
kind of out of the ordinary for a lot of people, especially if you're experiencing anxiety and experiencing numbness and dissociation in your body, to actually feel that pull. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of this indescribable thing. And I feel like breathwork really does have that pull to kind of follow. And even though you didn't consciously know that's what you were heading towards, it just
Mm-hmm.
allows you to kind of get pulled into it. And my first experience with breathwork, that vibration electric feeling that you were kind of describing,
Mm-hmm.
it, for some people it's so intense and can feel really overwhelming. But
Yeah.
for a lot of people, that first experience of feeling your body for the
Mm-hmm.
first time in decades is such a kind of homecoming. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what it felt like for me. And it sounds like that's what it felt like for you as well, is this coming home to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the subsequent 8 years of like discovery and experiencing and going into the depths of it. Like, what was one of your biggest, like, obviously getting the download of your business is one of the biggest aha moments for you through these experiences, but in your own like mental health journey experience with your body image,
Mm-hmm.
um what was the biggest kind of shift that you felt when you started doing breath work that
Mm-hmm.
changed maybe past narratives that you had about yourself?
Mm-hmm. I like how you mentioned like that whole concept of like the pull. And I often refer to that as like this the soul pull, like our soul is pulling us into a direction that has just does not make any sense to the mind. Like, when people join our program to become a breathwork facilitator, the first thing that they say is like, this makes no sense. Like, here I am working this 9 to 5 job. It makes no sense, but my soul is calling me forth into it. That's the potentiality of doing breathwork, because we have that spaciousness where we are breathing and it's stimulating our amygdala, which is our center for emotional control. It's mitigating the response of our survival strategy. So we're releasing the anxiety and the fear and the doubt and everything. And it's allowing us to see ourselves and the world in a completely different way, void of fear. And it's in that where our soul's like, go do this thing. And in that moment, we don't have the protectors of, no, don't do that. That's dangerous, or whatever it is. And so breathwork has the ability of pulling us into our alignment quicker than anything else, because it breaks the mental matrix of limitation and puts us into this place of infinite potentiality.
Yep.
And so it's just been the biggest game changer in my life. Everything that's good in my life, honestly, Anna, it's like everything that's good in my life has come through a breathwork session. Like, I'm just looking around and I'm like, oh wow, it's sunny outside and I live in Southern California in this like beautiful home. Well, why do I live here? Because I did a breathwork session and breathwork was like, go there, right? I'm like, oh, I'm married to this like epic human who I'm so inspired by. Why am I with him? Because I did a breathwork session. My breath was like, break up with that guy and go for this guy. Right? It's like everything good in my, like, pause breathwork. Beautiful company, have helped thousands of people, tons of people. It's like this came through a download. Yeah, so it's like everything beautiful in my life has not come through my ego or cognitive mind rationalizing my next step. It's come from this soul pull of, it doesn't even make sense for me to move to San Diego. It doesn't make sense for me to do this. It doesn't make, but those are always the best things when they don't make sense, but they're so aligned with the soul.
Yeah, and I feel like it allows you to sit in that space of not having to make sense of things too, like
Mm-hmm.
especially past
Mm-hmm.
experiences. Whenever I do a breath work, like memories and images flow to the surface, and
What's this?
yeah, what is going on? Like, and the
Mm-hmm.
ability to just allow that to occur and to just almost watch this montage
Mm-hmm.
happen and to not have to meddle or make
Yeah.
sense of or fix
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
historical events in your life is so refreshing.
100%.
Like after doing talk
Mm-hmm.
therapy for like over a decade and feeling like I was banging my head against a wall,
Mm-hmm.
having this
Mm-hmm.
space where I could almost be a bystander to these
Mm-hmm.
events in my life was just like taking a step back and being able to just integrate things that were kind of poking into my sides, causing all of this pain. It allowed me
Mm-hmm.
to smooth those surfaces. And I just feel everything that you say so
Mm-hmm.
deeply, because I feel like once you kind of
Mm-hmm.
allow yourself to surrender to breath work, because there is a lot of tension
Yeah.
sometimes when you're like, oh, this feels weird or uncomfortable or
Mm-hmm.
chaotic or too much. When you kind of get past that point, your whole body wants to lean into it, and you
Yeah.
can really allow it to be this unraveling and then recreation of yourself and sense of self in a really beautiful way. So yeah, I just resonate so deeply with everything
Mm-hmm.
that you talk about. Would you differentiate breath work, or how would you specifically differentiate? Because I think we've kind of gone into it a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, but these cognitive like self-help practices are very obviously head focused, and breath work is very bodily focused.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see these two kind of intersecting with one
Yeah.
another?
Great question. We need both. Both are extremely important. If we did body-based practices without giving the mind directive or the mind somewhere to go, it would feel very elusive and it would be hard for the mind to feel safe, for the body to feel safe. So the way that I teach it at Pause is an 80-20 split.
Mm.
So 20% of the work essentially is mindset work, which is helping the brain have direction, have vision, right? So it's like analyzing the gap. Okay, here I am. Here's where I want to go. This is what needs to be done. These are the beliefs that I have that need to be rewired. These are the limitations that I've been holding on to. Here's the identities. Here's the stories. Here's all of the parts inside of me that have all of these different emotional needs and these stories and these protectors. So the 20% gives us context. We don't have to excavate every single detail of our trauma in order to heal it, you know? And that's a lot of times where we get stuck in therapy or cognitive behavior change is we're reliving the past, reliving the past, reliving the past. We're details, details, details. Okay, well, he was wearing khaki pants and it was 2:33 and it was September 14th. It's like, that doesn't matter. It's so irrelevant. We don't need to have all of the context and details in order to do all of the healing.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so give your brain directive. This is where we're going. This is what we're changing. This is what we're doing. But then the real work is really getting into the body and coming home to those small parts of us that just need love and they have unmet needs. And we do that through feeling. Feeling brings us back into our wholeness. We get to meet ourselves in those places that feel crunchy and scary. And we get to love ourselves in those places. And it integrates all of those parts back into our wholeness,
Yeah.
right? I'm a huge fan of IFS parts work. And we teach a lot of that at Pause Breathwork, of realizing that there's so we don't just have one inner child. We have an entire preschool down there, and there's so many different versions of us, and inner child needs, and protectors, and emotional needs, and unmet needs. Like, it's a whole thing. And so when we realize that it's not our adult that's always online, it's these parts of us that just need support and love, then we can really begin to isolate these parts and look at them for what they are, right? There's a part of me that's the people pleaser. There's a part of me that's the workaholic. There's a part of me that's codependent in relationships, or whatever we find down there. And then we can actually begin to understand, what is the emotional need of this part? What is the protector of this part? And what is the unmet need? And how can we, or what is the original wound? And how can we begin to be gentle and soft and attuned with ourselves, realizing that that's all at play simultaneously?
Yeah. What a game
Yeah.
changer to be able to look at yourself
Mhm.
with such compassion, as opposed to
Mhm.
frustration and often
Mhm.
shame or guilt that comes from our
Yeah.
reactions in day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And like, even when you have that self-awareness, you're still going to stumble, you're
Mhm.
still going to do the
Yeah.
reactive thing from time to time. But
100%.
when you can shift that perspective to go, I make sense in this world. I make sense why I'm doing this. It doesn't make you feel like you're an outsider looking in anymore. It makes you feel like
Mm.
you're part of the club again, and you can actually be present with all of the parts
Yeah.
of yourself instead of
Yeah.
at war. How important is intention for like crafting that narrative? And I feel like sometimes intention um, is a like cognitive process that, when you start breathing, gets a little muddied. Like, you think
Mhm.
it's one
Mhm.
thing and then something else is coming up. But do
Mm.
you think that matters, if your intention is one thing and then
Mm.
what your body actually gives you is something else?
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Our intentions aren't always answered in the way that our mind thinks that they will be.
Yeah.
And sometimes it comes in a completely different package and it doesn't make sense, but later it does.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about intention. I'm a huge intention setter with everything that I do, because we have to lay the energetic groundwork first so that we can walk on it and have momentum.
Yeah.
So with anything, and people feel intention. They can. So my husband, he owns an Airbnb business called Free Wild, and he is so intentional about every detail in every single cabin. It's just, everything's beautiful. Like, the forks are beautiful. It's like every detail is so intentional. And he intentionally created it that way because he wanted people to feel like, holy shit, this fork is amazing, right? Like, oh my gosh. So it's, the difference is in that, and the experience that people get from that, versus going to a generic Airbnb where it says live, laugh, love on the wall, and the couch sucks, and the silverware is all flimsy, right? It's like a different flavor.
Yeah.
And so people feel the intention that we put into things always, and our body is responding to our intention
Yep.
always, right? And that's why I'm such a big believer in setting, like, I set intentions for my day. I set intentions for coming on podcasts. I set intentions for how I want to, treat myself that day, my husband. Like, intentionality is one of the greatest things that we can do, because we're using the energetic field to co-create with us. And if we don't have that, then it just gets very muted.
Yeah.
And so, to answer your question about breathwork, sometimes I go into breathwork completely agendaless, with zero intention, and I'm just like, yo, body, what do you have for me today? And then there's other times where I'm like, my intention today is to feel a deeper sense of safety as an entrepreneur, so that I can take more risk. And that'll
Yep.
be like my very specific intention. And then, however my body delivers that to me, I get to trust that that's exactly the medicine that I needed that day in order to fulfill that intention.
Yeah. I think that's the key part, isn't it? Is trusting
Mhm.
that even if you don't recognize something coming up as being aligned with your intention, that your body delivers
Mhm.
essentially exactly what you
Mhm.
need, even if you're
Mhm.
not consciously aware of it. And I think that part is sometimes
Mhm.
tricky or difficult or
Mhm.
challenging for people to rebuild that level of trust with their body. But I feel like that's where breathwork really does give you like a tether to grab onto and start to kind of rebuild that
Mm-hmm.
connection between the two. So how do you how have you come to understand how controlled breathing through conscious connected breath work, or the 3-part breath,
Mm-hmm.
actually influences our autonomic nervous system? And you kind of
Mm-hmm.
touched on it a little bit before with the amygdala, but how does this actually shift us out of a sympathetic or stress state
Mm-hmm.
and kind of put us
Mm-hmm.
into maybe a greater state of resilience or peace or calm?
Yeah. So it's going back to the nervous system regulation. So when we're doing conscious connected breath work, or as you named it, the 3-part breath, that pause, we call it the triactive breath, which is into the belly, up into the chest, out through the mouth. What we're doing here is we are stimulating our parasympathetic nervous system. We're stimulating our vagus nerve, which increases our vagal tone. Now, our vagal tone is the conduit to help us spend more time in our parasympathetic nervous system than our sympathetic nervous system. Now, the way that our world is designed right now, it is so easy for us to chronically be in our sympathetic nervous system, right? The speed of our world, social media, as amazing as it is, you know, you and I have connected through social media. We wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for social media. It also has huge downfalls, which we all know about. The internal rush of like, oh my God, am I good enough? I got to go faster. I got to build this more, right? So there's like an external rush, and then there's an internal rush. And then we have all of the stimulus. Like, I mean, right now I have 117 unread text messages. It's like, I just cannot keep up, you know? And so what the practice does, what breath work does, is it gives me a dose of the medicine, which is our sympathetic nervous system. And I'm teaching my nervous system that it's safe to rest and relax and let go and just like be here.
Yeah.
And that's just not possible through the level of the mind. We have to slowly increase our vagal tone by stimulating our vagus nerve, which allows us to rest in our parasympathetic nervous system. And the more we do breath work, the easier it is to get there.
Yeah.
And so for someone who is chronically in their sympathetic nervous system and spends almost zero time in their parasympathetic nervous system, even 5 minutes of breath work a day can help them spend 80% of their time there, and then 70, and then 50. And then sure enough, over time, you're always in your parasympathetic, and we're only using our sympathetic for what it's designed for, which is like if we're at the gym, right? It's like, let's go. Like if I'm like in my parasympathetic nervous system at the gym, I mean, you look fit, you look like someone who works out, right? It's like you need the sympathetic nervous system, right? You got to have it, unless you're doing like yin yoga or whatever, right? Or when I'm on stage, I need to be in my sympathetic system because I'm like, let's go, right? Or if I'm running a massive breathwork event, whatever it is, it's like, how can we allow ourselves to get into that state, that sympathetic, parasympathetic state, so that we can rest and then consciously and intentionally activate our sympathetic nervous system. So it's really about us outsmarting our body.
Or even just utilizing it to the best of its ability,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Like I
Exactly.
think we totally underutilize our body and its capacity
Oh,
for
completely.
healing, for
Mm,
just everyday optimization, really.
mm,
Like one thing that I started doing was, when you go on holiday and you're like, I should be relaxing, I should be relaxing, and
mhm.
the more that you think you should be relaxing, the more like tense you become, and it doesn't become a holiday. So
Yeah.
at the start of every holiday, we start by doing a breath work, like just to ease ourselves in, because you just drop into that state so much faster. And it
Mhm.
gives you a kind of like line between like the person that you are outside of this holiday
Yeah.
and the person that you get to be. Like you get to
Yeah.
be in this restful state. And I think sometimes we don't think that we deserve to be in a restful state for
Mhm.
too long. And
Mhm.
so if we can remove our ego from that equation for a moment and actually feel into that
Mhm.
restful state, then we have such a better time feeling much more
Mhm.
relaxed. But
Yeah.
breathwork for me is like such an immediate kind of experience. So like you start breathing,
Mm.
and within like 60 to 90 seconds you're feeling all of the feelings.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
in the immediate benefits, like compared to the long-term benefits, have you noticed like when you first started doing breath work what that experience was like, and now after
Mhm.
being 15 years of experiencing
Mhm.
this type of modality, what you have, and you touched on it before, like all of these good things coming to you through breath work, but
Mhm.
outside of like the circumstances, just internally health wise,
Mm.
have you noticed any long term benefits of breath work for
Mm.
yourself?
This is such a good question. So I'll go back to the beginning. The the more immediate benefits were because I was in my body, I could tell the difference between an emotional hunger cue and a physical hunger cue. This
Mm.
is when I was fighting food and hating my body. So that was so valuable for me because I stopped overeating and undereating. I stopped overexercising. I was in consent with what my body was asking for, which ultimately healed my eating disorder. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was anxiety. I'm like, oh, anxiety and truth cannot coexist. So if I'm anxious, where am I lying to myself? And that was a whole fun awakening of just getting in alignment with myself.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, breath work is the antidote to anxiety. When I use breath work, I'm releasing my survival strategies that create the anxiety.
Mm.
Oh, I have something that I can release my anxiety in 60 seconds or less. How amazing. And then when I'm in my body, I can actually feel a deeper sense of safety while I'm in my body. So that was amazing. And then what I named before of like just the manifestation powers of breath work. But then there's also this physical aspect to it where because it has the ability to actually go in and release stuck emotion and pain and where we're holding, my physical body began to feel a lot lighter and a lot more open. Now, long term, so I've done breath work every single day for 20 minutes minimum. Last month I did a little challenge where I did it an hour every single day. That was fun. But every single, unless I was like crazy sick or whatever. But over time, the biggest thing that I've learned is that I really do have all the answers within me. Not from like this egotistical of I know everything, but it's like I know what's best for my life path. And that serves me so well in so many situations with my business, for instance. If I'm like, I don't know what to do, it's like, yeah, I do. Just go breathe for 20 minutes and you'll have the answer, you know? And so, what that's given me is an incredible amount of confidence to be able to lead, guide, take risks, and know that I'm always supported. And it's allowed me to be more competent because I'm not dependent on things outside of myself, which feels very empowering. So, that would be the long term thing. And then, like, there's a sense of trust that I'm going to figure it out because I always have and I always will. And that sense of trust also feels very stabilizing to my system of, my world can be spinning and a million things can be changing all at the same time, but I feel like I have this alignment and this confidence that knows it's going to be okay no matter what because it always is. Yeah. Yeah, that's like the big ones.
They're pretty epic, like long term benefits to experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's what here's what's really interesting is like, I mean, I've been talking about breathwork for so long, and I never get sick of it because there's always like breath. People joke with me all the time. They're like, "I have a flat tire." I'm like, "Breathwork." I'm not saying it's the answer to everything, but I'm also not saying that. Like breathwork for me, like completely healed like has helped me really manage my ADHD, my anxiety, my eating disorder, relationally. Like it is so powerful. And I think when people are like, "Oh yeah, breathing," they think like, oh, just like the pranayama that you do in yoga. It's like, that's amazing. And there's a whole other layer. Like at Pause, we teach breath work for meditative breath work, which is longer than 8 minutes, which is after 8 minutes, we go into more of that altered state of consciousness, which is where a lot of the deep healing happens. And then under 8 minutes is more of like the relaxation, meditate or integrative, where you can do it while you're doing the dishes or on a podcast or whatever. And so when you get into like the meditative breath work for transformation, where we're going, into the deeper layers, there's a lot of really powerful healing that we can do there.
I think people think of breath work and they go, that's too simple. My life's
Yeah.
complicated. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I've noticed a lot is that there's just so much surprise from people when they actually experience breath work. I wasn't expecting that to actually feel anything like any
Yeah.
certain way
Yeah.
or bring anything to the surface. And I think we, like, again, we undercut our body's ability to shift
Mm-hmm.
historical events, current circumstances, our mindset, perspectives, all of the things. And it gets to be simple and it gets to not be this big overblown experience all of the time. It gets to be something that we can do in our own home by ourselves in safety. And I think that's such a beautiful gift that we have evolved physiologically to create within ourselves. Like we do
Totally.
have all the answers. You did say something like a lot about building this sense of self-trust and really having your own back essentially.
Yeah.
How was your relationships with other people ever something that you struggled with, as in you struggled to trust other people,
Mm.
that hyper independent state, and you've used this kind of self trust as an overflow to kind of build interdependence and connection as well? Or was that
Mm.
never really the thing that was a problem for you?
That's not one of my things. I got lots of things. That's not one of them. In fact, I'm kind of on the other side of the spectrum where I trust people too much. I just think everyone's amazing. Like it's my blessing and curse, right? It's like everyone's amazing and I only see the best in you and I assume that there's nothing wrong with you. Like, and I've been burned by that.
That's me.
Right. Over the years, I've been burned, whatever, it doesn't even matter. But like, that's just my thing.
Yeah.
That's I love that about me, but I've learned to have discernment with that. I would say for me, my thing in terms of relationships would be more, um, yeah, like before I met my husband, I would date people that were, um, just not right for me, and I would assume it was like the love of my life, and it wasn't. And I'm like, "This is the one," and I think I said that like 10 times. My friends are like, I don't think so."
I feel like that's a kind of natural progression of growing up though, especially like we've all been there and we've all
Yeah.
made mistakes when
"This
it comes
is
to
the
humans.
one."
And
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
afterwards you're like, what the hell was
What
I
the
thinking?
hell? Yeah, exactly,
But I think
exactly.
it's just an
Mm,
interesting kind of aspect of it. Like often
mm,
when like I'm very trusting of other people, but for a long time I didn't trust myself, or
no.
the messages that my body was sending me were scary. And so I
Mhm,
think as a result of that, I would almost self-sabotage relationships because I was getting like
mhm,
these mixed messages where I didn't know how to like co-regulate with someone else because my body was
mhm,
like, we don't trust that you
mhm,
can handle
mhm,
this
mhm.
situation. So
Yeah.
I think it's really just fascinating to kind of hear your perspective on just
Mm,
the overflow of breath work. For anyone that is kind of
mhm,
on the fence about breath work, how do you, I mean, it's not even persuasion, but like, how do you just kind of get them to open up curiosity about experiencing
mm.
this?
A couple years ago, I was teaching breathwork at a maximum security prison up in Northern California, and I taught breathwork to about 30 inmates there. And at first, they were like, "What are you doing? What's this Southern California chick gonna teach me?" And within, yeah, the first like couple minutes of the breath work, they were crying and opening up their hearts. And it was like one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. And at the end of it, one of the men came up to me and he was like, "I had never felt my heart until this moment. And if I knew how to do this, I wouldn't be in here right now." And that always, for me, illustrates the power of what's possible if we just do it. It's like, I think so much in life, what holds us back is us having to know all those steps and all the pieces in order to get value out of something.
Yeah.
What if we didn't have to do that? What if we just allowed ourselves to like have the experience and be open to it being the most miraculous thing in the world or the worst thing in the world? And either way, it's totally fine.
Yeah. I always
And
say to people, you can fucking hate it if you want. Like, just try it first.
100%. And guess what? Sometimes I hate it. Sometimes I'm like, fuck this. I don't want to breathe. Right? I don't love it every single day. There's
Yeah.
days where I'm like, I do not want to get on that mat right now. But
Yeah.
I know the value and I know how valuable it is. And I know how, I say, my friend Chris Winfield says, I work hard to make my life easy. And I'm like, yeah, I work hard in my 20 minutes of breath work every single day so that my life becomes a lot easier because I don't get caught in my own shit and I'm not, molded with my inner child who just has all of these needs all the time and I can see clearly. And
Yeah.
that is so valuable for me. The ROI on that 20 minutes is so valuable for me. So for those people listening who are like, this sounds great, just do it. Just freaking do it. Do it for 3 minutes. On our Breathwork app, it's called Pause Breathwork. You can download it. It's for free 14-day trial. There's literally tracks that are 3 minutes. They're 3 minutes. Just go try it. That's all it takes.
Yep. I will pop the pause breathwork link for the app in
Cool.
the show notes as well. So definitely go and try it out. It is something that I have personally used and benefited greatly from as well.
Mm.
So just to round things off, the future of breathwork, the future of pause, the future of Samantha Skelly, what does that look like?
Our mission at Pause is to make emotional suffering optional. And the mission that we're on right now is training and certifying 10,000 people in our method because the ripple effect of that is just ginormous. And so that's what we're focused on right now is just creating a world-class, continually creating a world-class certification that serves people on such a deep, deep level and creating world-class content that gets people interested in breath work. And yeah, it's interesting the question of like, what's next? I'm always surprised at what's next,
Yeah.
It's always better than I could possibly imagine. So just continually being open to where this mission wants me to take it. I really feel like it's ever since it sort of dropped in, it's been like this collaboration with God of like, we're doing this now. No, we're not. We're doing this now. We're going to go over here now. I'm like, okay, wow. I'm just going to hold on and see what happens. And it's just been like a beautiful collaboration with God and being able to connect and partner with so many people who are like, I want to be a breathwork facilitator, and then being able to pour into them and then seeing what they're doing in the world. We now have thousands of people in 27 different countries who are teaching this method and have built successful businesses doing it. It's pretty profound. So yeah, the goal going forward is just keep doing what we're doing and keep educating and keep inspiring and keep showing up and keep seeing the momentum build. It's been really cool.
Yeah, and stay open
Mm.
because, yeah, everything is possible as long as you breathe into it. So,
Yeah.
Samantha, thank you so much for joining me today.
Mm.
I've loved this episode and chatting to you. You are a wealth of knowledge. Go and check out Pause Breathwork. I'll put all the links in the show notes again. So, be sure to be curious and check all of that out. But thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks so much for having me.